Welcome back to this week's Human Approach video interview series, where we are doing another episode of Recruitment 101, which I've really enjoyed listening to some of the guests. And we've actually got, we're going with a different angle this week, aren't we, Jake?
Yes.
Yeah, slightly different angle. So Jake is actually coming at it from the job seeker perspective, which I think is going to be really interesting. So for those who don't know what Recruitment 101 is, it's basically looking at all those different elements of recruitment that we just want to throw in the bin. So think about Room 101 that we used to see on the TV years ago with Frank Skinner and other presenters. And that's what we're going to chat about today. So I'm Kerri-Ann Hargreaves, leader of H2 Consultancy, and I'm going to throw over to Jake to actually introduce himself. So hi, Jake.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jake. I'm a management accountant. I've been a client of Kerri-Ann's for just over the last 2 years or so. And over the last sort of 6 months or so, I've been active in the job market due to redundancy, and I've sort of experienced quite a few different interview styles, interview techniques. So hoping I've got some good things to throw into Room 101 today.
I'm sure you have, and you've kind of experienced the job market at two different stages, really, because obviously you came onto the job market 2 or 3 years ago, and that's when I helped you and popped you into one of our hiring businesses. And I know you've had you had a great time there, and then the pandemic hit, and obviously, sadly, you were working in an industry that was severely impacted, wasn't it?
Yeah, massively, yeah.
Massively impacted. So Jake's really experienced the job market. I'd probably say in some scenarios at its worst, and in others at its best, because there was a time when it was really quiet and there was a lot of panic, and I understand. And then obviously there was a point where it became extremely buoyant and you had a lot of opportunity to do it. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have a lot of interesting experiences. I'm not going to say negative, I'm going to say interesting. What do you think?
Challenges, I suppose, is probably the best way to describe some of the scenarios that you find yourself in. But yeah, I think you're right. I think experiencing the job market at its worst sort of around Christmas time was really tough, and then sort of the last 2 to 3 months it's crazy. There's just jobs sort of shooting fish in a barrel sort of thing. There's a lot out there at the minute for candidates, which is obviously good to show that the economy is recovering from the effects of last year.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that's actually a really good message to people, is that the market is really buoyant at the moment, isn't it? But it doesn't mean that it's easy.
No.
And I think for job seekers, because obviously it's very competitive, isn't it? And I think you've really got to be specific in what you're looking for, so that you're not just, stabbing in the dark. But let's jump into Recruitment 101, because that's what we're here for. And I've managed to catch Jake before his work day starts. So hopefully he's not too tired from the weekend.
No, refreshed and ready to go.
Awesome. So, right, what's the first thing, the biggest bugbear you have from the job searching process? Let's see if we can put it into Room 101. So what is it?
Yeah, well, I think this will probably resonate with a lot of people watching this video, but furlough.
Wow.
I think furlough's the big one for me. It's one that I experienced a couple of times, and sort of interviewers looking at it from a negative point of view. I had one specific sort of interview where it was highlighted sort of 2 or 3 times during the interview, which made me feel quite uncomfortable, as obviously nobody wanted to be on furlough. Nobody wanted to not be at work. Everybody wanted to be at work, and it was just a really unfortunate situation, which is no fault of either the employers or the employees at the end of the day. And sort of it being approached from a sense that, you were on furlough, so does that mean you weren't critical to the business? And obviously that's not always the case, is it? So I think furlough's the big one for me.
I didn't actually know which angle you were going to go at for furlough. So I'm really pleased that you've gone at it from this angle, because what you've said there, Jake, is so true. businesses, employees, no one chose furlough, but it was the only way for some businesses to retain their people. Like you, for example, you experienced being on and off furlough a few times in the year, didn't you? Because it reflected the need of the business, and you were a critical role because you were actually one of the last people to be made redundant, weren't you? And there were some people made redundant much earlier in the period. So you're absolutely right. And to go through a recruitment process, and rightly so, I know you felt judged through that piece of recruitment, didn't you, because of the wording. And I'm not sure wholly that it might have been meant to come across that way. I'm trying to hope that people were kinder than that. But I think it definitely wasn't a positive experience for you. And I'd probably say so 6 months ago, 3 months ago, there was no negativity at all around furlough. And then we've actually seen it creeping in. And I think that's what you've experienced, haven't you?
Yeah.
Started to creep in, and you were questioned as to why you were on furlough. I've had some candidates, be asked what they did with regards to their continuing professional development while they were on furlough. Wow. And what do you think about that question? If you've been asked that question, what would your answer be?
I'd not been asked that specific question. I mean, I've been asked a few times what I did while I was on furlough, which I think is a reasonable question. And
me too.
For me, I had I've got a stepson who's 9 years old, so my furlough was homeschooling. So me and my family were quite lucky in that regard, that I was able to support him from those sort of terms. I think it's a strange one, because there's some people who've taken furlough and then I've got somebody who I know who's completed their SEMA qualification while he was on furlough. Obviously, not everybody has got those opportunities, resources, time. If they've got other commitments. But I think it's reasonable to ask what you did with yourself on furlough as a general rapport building, chit chat sort of question. But I think to go into specifics and question people who are, say, part qualified with their qualifications, say, so what did you do with your exams while you were on furlough? I think employers, interviewers have got to remember that most people were on reduced salary. There was redundancies, people were looking for jobs. It was they may have had shielding relatives that needed additional support. So I think there's a whole host of factors that can come into play.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's I think it's nice to understand what people did during their furlough, and I think a lot of people ask because they're trying to build rapport and have that conversation with someone in an interview. I have experienced it though with one business where it was judgmental and it was negative when the individual said, well, actually, I was caring for family, I was homeschooling, and I, renovated the garden, and I looked after elderly relatives, and it was seen to be negative that actually they didn't continue with their studies or, but you're right. You were on furlough, you were 80% less salary. Granted, I know there was nowhere, you were 80% salary, sorry. I know there was nowhere for us to go, but if there's all those other factors in, like caring for people, homeschooling and job searching, you could probably say that that's 2 jobs anyway, as well as trying to be our parent, not just our teacher. So, I think, it's an unjust question, and I'm glad that you went at it from this angle, because I agree with you. Let's, I think we vote. Room 101.
For me, 100%, For me, 100%.
Yeah, so furlough is recruitment 101. It's gone. It's gone, Jake. It's okay. Leave it behind.
Excellent.
You've found a new role now, hence the shirt and tie, not just you're in a new role, so we're all good. So let's think about the second thing then. So for anyone who's just joining, we are discussing recruitment 101. We're popping things hopefully into the bin that we dislike from a job seeker perspective. So what's number 2?
Number 2, I think this one has been touched on a couple of times as well. So this one is salaries not being displayed on job adverts.
It's It's huge.
As a candidate and a job searcher, it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was either Joe or Katie, I'm sorry, I can't remember, did run a poll
Katie,
on this.
yeah.
Katie was it? They ran a poll on this, I think it was last week or the week before, and it generated quite a lot of interesting viewpoints. But for me, as a candidate, as a job searcher, I can sort of understand some instances where you might not display a salary on advert for, you know, if you're looking for a finance director or, you know, a very senior sort of position. But I think generally speaking, I just think it's a big no-no. I think you need to tell people what you're offering. You know, you're potentially applying for jobs. You know, I apply for management accountant jobs, and a management accountant job can range from sort of 25 grand a year, sort of all the way up to 40 grand a year. So for me, it's a really broad range of sort of salary.
Yeah,
you've just got no idea if you're overqualified, underqualified, or if you hit the nail on the head. But yeah, for me, just displaying salaries on an advert needs to be standard practice, I think, for everybody. And I know it's something that you do.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And even when you said there right at the start that it doesn't, you know, perhaps for a senior level role, but actually I just think it's lazy, you know, when businesses don't advertise. Half the time I think it's because they're just trying to attract people and hoping that you get maybe an overqualified candidate, then they lure them into the business. But ultimately, we've all got bills to pay. You know, we all want to be, receiving a salary that is for our worth, you know, in the marketplace. And I think it just wastes time. You know, you will hear some businesses that say, well, I don't want to, please don't advertise salary because I don't want to offend the people that are in the department. Well, I think you're probably doing, a disservice to the people that are already in your business, because clearly you're underpaying people. Clearly, because there's no reason to hide salary. You know, roles are within, you know, brackets for a reason, you know, because you're going through a process. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It wastes your time, Jake.
Yeah.
You know, it wastes. How many times do you sit there, you look at a job advert that you've seen, whether it's with a business or an agency? I think most times with agencies, you'll always see a salary. But I think it's generally when businesses are hiring directly. We know a lot of businesses that don't put salaries on, and then they will complain and say we haven't had the right quality of candidates or the right number. And I think that's the issue, is people don't want to hit apply because they think, well, is this just a stab in the dark? I'm just throwing my CV in hoping it'll stick. But actually, if I put that my salary is 5k higher than what they want to pay, they're not going to consider me anyway. But you might be flexible. I just think it's a waste of your time, and time is precious when you're looking for a job. And it's a waste of the time of the hiring manager, because ultimately you're not going to get the quality or the number of applicants that you want, because they don't know what they're applying to.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, where it's, I think you look at it from one or two perspectives. They're either undervaluing the current staff if they don't advertise the salary, because people are then going to potentially ask questions why certain salary is higher than theirs, or they're looking to attract an overqualified candidate in the hope that they'll get a lot better value for money. But I think you get the best value for money if you get the right person in for the job, because an overqualified candidate is not going to stay.
No,
if you over egg a job, or if you fluff it to make it look more than it is, then that person's going to come in expecting to do that position for X, and then they're going to be very underwhelmed, and then within 12 months you're going to be back on the job market again, and then you're going to have to go through the whole process again. So
I feel like you need a job in recruitment, Jake. You sound like
I think in another life, estate agent or recruitment might have been my thing. I always fancied HR as well. That always seemed interesting to me.
You're good as an accountant. You know, I've never heard a bad word. So you carry on with.
You're obviously not talking to the right people then.
No, you're all good. You're all good. Don't switch careers just yet. Although everything you've just said, absolutely you could say, because that's what we do. And I think you're right. It's just, it would be a waste of time. You know, why? I get that in this market, you might have a candidate who is overqualified applying for something
potentially
under their level, but as soon as that opportunity comes about that's attracting them back to the level that they've always operated at, they'll go. So therefore you're back on, you're back in a hiring scenario, and it's not easy, and it's expensive to onboard people. And I just think ultimately you bring a candidate into interview and they're never going to ask in that first interview, can you tell me what the salary is? Because it's a really taboo subject. And people feel really uncomfortable about it. So people might go through 2 or 3 stages of interviews. Well, everyone's just wasted that time.
That's the point. Yeah, I mean, it was strange for me when I initially came on the job market with yourself at first. I came from the NHS, so I came from public services. So it's public knowledge, what the person sat next to you was earning, what the person sat opposite, what this information's just common knowledge. You don't have to look at it. That someone's a certain banding, so that they earn around X amount of money. But then coming onto the job market where there's sort of lots of positions where there's no salary available, it was quite strange from my point of view. It's something that I've not experienced for quite a while until I joined the NHS, until I left. I was looking to leave the NHS. So it's very strange.
Actually, because a lot of people say that they don't allow people to talk about salaries and offices, but clearly, from the NHS, that wasn't a hindrance for you, was it? That was your banding, so you knew everyone knew where they were, and maybe the private sector could take a lesson.
I think so. I think so, because just purely from a progression point of view. So if you're sitting here as an assistant management accountant and you're sort of thinking, so my next step's going to be the management accountant, you don't know what you need to do to get to, you don't know how far you are away from that level. But within sort of public sector, you've got a bit more of an idea of where you're going and what you're doing, and sort of where you sit in the hierarchy. I think more than anything, where you sit in the food chain, and that's probably not the best term to use, but where
I agree with you. Yeah, completely. So let's vote then. So are we putting no salaries on adverts into Room 101? Recruitment 101, are we taking it? Yeah.
I think Room 101, I think that needs to become standard practice for anybody, just from transparency, and just so everybody's not wasting their time interviewing or doing an interview for a position, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's vote. That's gone. It's gone, Jake. We're throwing it in. You've got a clean sweep so far. You're doing all right.
Yeah, not too bad.
You're doing okay. Yeah, 2 out of 3 so far. So go on then, let's move on to the third. So is it a big one? Let's see what it is.
I think this one might, from an interviewer point of view, probably will cause a bit of, not controversy, will cause a bit of talking point. But I think from an interviewee point of view, this with Furlough, might resonate with a lot of people, is sort of being asked to regurgitate every single aspect of your CV when you're walking into a job interview. I think obviously there's an interviewer's seen your CV before you walk in the room. They've got a good idea of who you are, where you've been, what you've done, and there's obviously a need for them to hear it in your words, explain it face to face, and it all sort of forms part of that building the rapport. But I think there's a small sort of nuance where I think we should maybe be focusing on the things that are adding value to the interview. So rather than me discussing how many GCSEs I got when I was 16, I'd rather sort of, or the first job I got when I came out of school, I think more importantly, we should be focusing on the sort of the transferable skills, the transferable experience, the things that you've worked on which are applicable to your new position. So I think regurgitating your CV top to bottom, because I think as well, we're now in a world where people don't stay in a job for 35 years, from 20 up until 55 and retire, or 45 years. People, I don't know what the average
about 3 years.
I was going to say between 2 to 3 years, I would say. And I think people are moving more often and more regularly. And obviously that's for various different reasons. It's for, pushing yourself in terms of salary, or, gaining a whole wide range of experience to aid your professional development. So if you're having to sort of recite all of that each time, I think that could be quite a laborious process. And I think from the interviewer point of view as well, I think, you know, hearing, if you're interviewing 5 people, having to sit and hear all those CVs, I think you would quite easily sort of not get bored, but just sort of become a bit disconnected from the interview, I think. So,
yeah, of course. Yeah, I think you're right, Jake. And how boring would it be to sit there in an interview and just listen to, let's say, 5 people, like you said, literally recovering their CV from when they left high school? You know, it's not necessary. It's not very forward thinking. It's not a modern way to actually discuss the right experience. And I think you mentioned it right at the start when you picked in on this subject, is that let's pick out the relevant skills, all the relevant roles, you know, and what you did 15 years ago, let's be honest, unless you're in a very niche industry, does it have any relevance?
No, I agree.
Does it have any relevance? What I did pre-recruitment, so 15, 20 years ago, has no relevance to what I do today. You know, it's definitely part of my makeup, it's part of my history, but I think you can bring it out in different ways. And I also think, does it just demonstrate that has the hiring manager actually read your CV?
Well, sort of sometimes, you know, you never know, do you? You never know. No, I think that's probably a fair point. Are they using that to sort of save themselves some time and not read the CV? Or
whereas really, what they should have done, Jake, is you would hope that they'd perhaps highlight areas on your CV, circled points. And if that doesn't naturally come up, that builds the interview, you know, in terms of the questions that you need to ask to get the relevant information out to see if you are the right fit. Because, you know, I just think, you're right. Going into an interview, being asked to just literally reel off your whole CV, well, it's just boring. I would be bored listening to myself, you know.
I think that's what my interview for Alton Towers, and that's what Kevin did in the second interview, rather than, because he never met me before, rather than sit and ask me to explain my entire CV, he'd got a copy of my CV, he'd highlighted things, he'd circled things, and he just picked up on those small points rather than the whole.
Which is a great way to interview. It is. It's a great way to interview because you're having a natural conversation. Whereas I think if you're just being asked to, tell me about, you know, the first job that you ever did as you came out of high school, gosh, you know, I'm not sure I can really remember all the ins and outs to make it relevant. Can we discuss the last 2 roles I've had because they are really, you know, relevant to this opportunity? I think that's just a really old school way. We discussed something else on another video the other week, and it was about asking candidates just to literally go onto a website and, you know, read off all the information about the company when you're trying to do research. It's exactly the same. There's got to be more modern ways of discussing, you know, your experience, hasn't there? It's got to be more relevant.
I think on that one, the question of, tell me what you know about the company, I think it's become a two-way street. I think as a candidate, you've got to sell yourself to the business. You always have. Have. It's, you know, you're in sales essentially, aren't you, when you're applying, when you're going through.
You are,
But I think as well, from an interviewer point of view, I think there needs to be a bit of, this is why it's good to work for this company. This is what we can do. This is what I've done. I think there needs to be a bit more of a two-way street in those terms as well.
And I think that's the same when you're actually interviewing and they're asking you to talk through your CV. You know, it needs to be, is there anything specific? I think you need to throw that question back. Before I go right the way back to when I was 15 and I left school, or 16, is there anything specifically that you'd like me to highlight? Because I've had 5 jobs, or I've had 1 job for 1 business for 30 years, and there's a lot there to, you know, decipher. So I think you've got to do that awkward situation where you answer a question with a question that nobody likes.
But
let's be specific here. Let's not waste people's time. So let's vote. So we're popping not being asked to regurgitate your whole CV into Recruitment 101. Is it a yes?
I'm sort of on the fence with this one. I think it does have its, it does.
I'm going in.
You're going in.
I'm going in.
I'm sort of on the fence with it. I think there's times where it does probably, if you're sort of moving every sort of 10, 12 months, I think you'd probably want to dig into a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
But probably generally speaking, I think I would, from my point of view, for me,
Yeah.
I think I would put it in room 101, yeah.
It's got to go in. I think the only time it's relevant is if you're a graduate and you've just left college or university, and it's, you know, you haven't really got a lot to discuss, have you? So it's relevant there. Whereas clearly, you know, gosh, at my age, 41, being asked to go back and discuss my whole CV would be a very lengthy discussion. We don't need that, do we? So I think all three there, Jake, you've done really well.
Yeah, clean sweep.
Clean sweep.
Good way to start the week.
I know, yeah, good way to start the day and the week. Happy Monday.
Yeah. Happy with that, yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much, Jake, because that's like a completely different perspective than what I've, you know, discussed so far on Recruitment 101.